Do you always forget to lock your doors, or was this an invitation? Andrew's voice cut through the silence like a sharp blade, dragging me from my thoughts. He stood in the doorway of my room, his casual smirk clashing with the tension that instantly gripped the air. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of shock and embarrassment coursing through me. I pulled the towel tighter around my waist, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. Andrew wasn't supposed to be here, not in this room, not in this moment. Andrew, my older cousin by 2 years, had arrived earlier that day for a short visit while passing through the city. The family reunion hadn't been planned. It was more a product of convenience and his charm. Everyone in the family adored him, confident, charismatic, and impossibly good-looking. I hadn't seen Andrew in years, not since I was in high school and he was already a college senior. Back then, he was untouchable, the golden boy everyone admired. But seeing him now, years later, was like being hit with a wave I wasn't ready to ride. He had grown into himself in ways I hadn't anticipated. His broad shoulders filled out his plain black t-shirt, and his casual, easy confidence made every room seem smaller when he was in it. And then there was his laugh, the kind that could make you feel like the only person in the world. The day had been uneventful so far. Andrew had arrived in the morning, lugging his duffel bag into the house with a grin plastered on his face. He greeted everyone with warm hugs and casual jokes, immediately slipping into his role as the favorite. I had kept my distance, unsure how to act around him now that I wasn't a shy teenager anymore. We exchanged polite words at lunch, small talk about work, mutual relatives, and plans for his short stay. Every time his eyes met mine, though, I felt a pull I couldn't explain. It wasn't just admiration, it was something deeper, something I knew I shouldn't feel. That evening, I decided to take a long shower to clear my head. The warm water was meant to wash away the tension that had been building since Andrew's arrival, but instead, my thoughts only grew louder. I replayed every glance, every accidental brush of our arms, every moment when his presence seemed to fill the space around me. Stepping out of the shower, I wrapped a towel around my waist and headed to my room. I hadn't expected anyone to come upstairs. Everyone else was downstairs watching TV or chatting in the kitchen. The door was slightly ajar, but I thought nothing of it. Until Andrew walked in. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice cracking as I tried to sound composed. Andrew leaned against the doorframe, unbothered by the awkwardness of the moment. "I was looking for a phone charger. Mom said you might have a spare." His eyes flickered for a moment before locking onto mine. "Guess I found something else instead." His words were casual, but there was an undertone I couldn't quite place. I turned away, pretending to busy myself with grabbing clothes from the bed. "You could have knocked. And missed the look on your face?" "Never." His teasing tone was infuriatingly familiar, yet it held a weight that wasn't there when we were younger. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. My pulse raced as I tried to ignore the tension. Andrew didn't move, didn't step back into the hallway. Instead, he lingered, his presence filling the space. "Relax," he said after a beat. "It's not like I haven't seen a guy in a towel before." "It's different," I snapped, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. Andrew raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" I didn't have an answer. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Andrew chuckled and stepped back into the hallway. "Well, if you find a charger, let me know. I'll be downstairs." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone with the pounding in my chest and the questions swirling in my mind. As I closed the door behind him and leaned against it, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a fleeting moment of awkwardness. It was the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. But whatever it was, I wasn't ready to face it. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene from earlier. Andrew's casual demeanor contrasted starkly with the storm of emotions swirling in my chest. Every glance, every word, seemed to carry an undercurrent I couldn't decipher. Was it just me? Was I imagining things? I rolled over, trying to quiet my thoughts, but the faint creak of the floorboards outside my door jolted me upright. Before I could fully process the sound, there was a soft knock, followed by the door easing open. Andrew stepped inside, the glow of the hallway light outlining his broad frame. He was still wearing the same black t-shirt and jeans from earlier, but something about him felt different now, less confident, more hesitant. "Can't sleep?" I asked, my voice lower than I intended. He shrugged, leaning against the doorframe again. "Not really. Thought I'd see if you're still up." I sat up, pulling the blanket higher over my lap. "What's up?" He hesitated, his gaze flickering between me and the floor. For the first time since he'd arrived, he seemed unsure, vulnerable. About earlier, he began rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." The sudden sincerity in his tone caught me off guard. "It's fine," I said quickly, though the memory still burned in my mind. "No, it's not," he pressed, stepping further into the room. "I shouldn't have joked like that. I don't know why I did." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. There was something else behind his apology, something unspoken yet palpable. "It's not a big deal," I said finally, though my voice betrayed the truth. Andrew took another step closer, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "It is to me," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "I don't know how to explain it, but something feels different between us." The air between us shifted, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to confront. My heart pounded as I searched for the right response, but words failed me. "Different how?" I asked, echoing his earlier question. He let out a dry laugh, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "I don't know, Ryan. That's what's messing with my head." Hearing my name in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. He rarely used it, and when he did, it always felt deliberate. I forced a smile, trying to lighten the mood. "Maybe you're just overthinking it. We haven't seen each other in years. It's probably just nostalgia or something." "Nostalgia doesn't feel like this," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the floor. My breath hitched, the weight of his words sinking in. "Andrew." He looked up then, his eyes locking onto mine. "I don't know what this is, Ryan, but I can't stop thinking about it. About you." The room spun, my thoughts colliding in a chaotic blur. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. Andrew was the golden boy, the straight cousin everyone adored. This wasn't part of the story we were supposed to share. "I think you should go," I said, though the words felt hollow as they left my lips. Andrew didn't move. Instead, he leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "If that's what you want," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not about what I want," I snapped, the frustration in my chest finally bubbling to the surface. "Do you have any idea what you're saying? What this means?" "I know exactly what it means," he said firmly. "That's why I can't ignore it." The silence that followed was deafening. My mind raced, torn between the impossibility of the situation and the undeniable pull I felt toward him. "Andrews, this can't happen," I said finally, my voice cracking under the weight of the words. He nodded slowly, standing up and taking a step back. "I get it," he said, though the pain in his eyes betrayed his calm tone. "But I had to say something. I couldn't keep pretending like nothing's changed." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Good night, Ryan," he said softly before slipping into the hallway. As the door clicked shut, I felt a mixture of relief and regret wash over me. My heart ached with the weight of what had just transpired, but the tension remained, unresolved and lingering like an open wound. I lay back down, staring once more at the ceiling. Andrew's words replayed in my mind, his voice carrying an honesty I wasn't prepared to face. This wasn't over, not yet. The next morning, the house was quiet. Sunlight filtered through my bedroom curtains, but it did little to ease the weight in my chest. I had barely slept, my mind replaying Andrew's words on a loop. "I can't stop thinking about you." The confession had left a crack in the foundation of everything I thought I knew about him, and us. How could I face him now? A soft knock at the door interrupted my spiraling thoughts. My stomach tightened, knowing exactly who it would be. "Come in," I called, though my voice betrayed my hesitation. Andrew stepped inside, looking uncharacteristically uneasy. His usual confidence was replaced with a tentative energy, his hands shoved into his pockets as he lingered by the door. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. I nodded, gesturing to the chair by the desk. "Yeah, sure." Instead of sitting, he crossed the room and stood by the window, gazing outside for a moment before turning back to me. "About last night?" he began, rubbing the back of his neck. "I meant what I said, but I need you to know I didn't come here to complicate things." "You don't think confessing something like that complicates things?" I said, trying to keep the edge out of my tone. He flinched but held my gaze. "I know it does. But I couldn't stay silent. Not when it feels this real." The sincerity in his voice made my heart ache. I wanted to push him away, to protect both of us from whatever this was, but his vulnerability kept pulling me back. "Andrew, you're my cousin," I said, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. "This isn't just complicated, it's impossible." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've been telling myself the same thing. But ignoring it doesn't make it go away." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling between us. He looked at me then, his eyes searching mine for something, permission, maybe, or understanding. "Do you really feel this way?" I asked quietly, my voice barely audible. His expression softened and he nodded. "I've been feeling it for a while, Ryan. I just didn't know how to admit it, not to you, not even to myself." The air between us was electric, charged with emotions neither of us fully understood. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Andrew, if we go down this road, there's no turning back. Do you understand that?" He nodded again, stepping closer. "I do. And I'm willing to figure it out if you are." The simplicity of his words shattered the walls I had built around myself. Against all logic, I realized I wanted this, wanted him. "I don't know where this will lead," I said honestly. "But I don't want to lose you." His lips curved into a small smile, relief washing over his features. "You won't?" For the first time since his arrival, the tension between us eased, replaced by a tentative warmth. He sat down on the edge of the bed, closer now, his presence grounding me. "Maybe we don't have to figure it all out right now," he said. "Maybe we just take it one step at a time." I nodded, feeling the weight in my chest lift slightly. One step at a time. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the morning light casting a soft glow over the room. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start, a fragile beginning to something we couldn't yet define. As Andrew reached out, his hand brushing against mine, I felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead would be uncertain, but in that moment, I knew we'd face it together. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that happiness, no matter how unconventional, was within reach.